people we're going to discuss with, all of us, right, are, Ben and I think, representative of a number of different spaces within Detroit, whether they're people who are not from Detroit originally and have kind of come in and really worked to make this space meaningful for them, but also meaningful for the people that they engage with, or they're lifetime Detroiters, right? I mean, I think we have a number of different people kind of represented. I'm gonna let them tell their stories. I certainly won't do them justice the way they will. So I'm gonna start in the middle with Shannon, because Roslyn is gonna freak out if I chose her first.
So my name is Shannon Smith. I'm a native Detroiter. I currently work as an analyst for the Federal Reserve, as well as legislative assistant for District 6 City Council, Councilman Markel Castaneda-Lopez. And just in the native newcomer, the discussion, the narrative is something that when I came back home from college, it was a culture shock to me. I grew up in Detroit, and it was predominantly African-American school systems. And when I went to Ann Arbor, I was expecting it, and that culture shock is something that I worked through. And really it taught me collaboration. It really taught me to reach across cultures, reach across ethnicities, and get a really diverse perspective for everything. And so when I came back to Detroit, it was just about figuring out the ways to make this possible. And so what I've done is just really try to be, less words, more action. And so with my work at the Federal Reserve, we created a program called the Detroit Economic Development Challenge. And in this challenge, we are challenging high school students to think about the problems in the city of Detroit differently and propose solutions for those problems. And we actually opened this up to high schools across southeastern Michigan, so that all around this region, high school kids can be thinking about Detroit and thinking about ways to really collaborate and solve some of these problems. I'll tell you, like, our first year, the winners came from International Academy. It's a school outside of the city of Detroit. They had the opportunity to present these ideas to top-ranking city officials who really took them serious about helping Detroit school kids and giving them access to opportunity. They created a work-study program, and the Grow Detroit Young Talent officials really liked it. So that's from the education standpoint. I also serve as a chair of community outreach for Detroit Young Professionals, and through my role there, I understood that there's a lot of new young professionals who are joining our organizations who are not from the city. And I took that opportunity to really educate those new young professionals who want to know about the neighborhoods. And so what I attempt to do, and what I am doing, is aligning with nonprofits who have been doing work for years in the city of Detroit, really highlighting some of the social issues and connecting those young professionals with opportunity, whether it be Motor City Makeover, whether it be working with the Detroit Rescue Mission to get a better understanding of the homelessness issue in the city of Detroit and figuring out solutions around those. And really that's kind of been my approach to it. I welcome really the interest in the city of Detroit, but I also understand that I grew up in the neighborhoods, and that has not trickled to the neighborhoods yet. And so I'm gonna keep pressing that issue until we see some type of plans for the neighborhoods as well. I mean, really, working with Raquel, like she says in her office a lot, and it's something I really have started to really try to follow, is the equity, access, and inclusion. And that's something that I really am trying to push for and have everybody on that same page.
Have you heard of Arise Detroit?
Yes. I'm actually going to be at the Boot Youth Summit this weekend.
All right.
I hear that they're doing some work that actually aligns pretty directly with some of that stuff. Nicole, what's up?
Me, okay. So I can't technically say I grew up in Michigan because I was born in Arizona, but I moved here when I was 3, so.
You grew up in
I pretty much, yeah. But I grew up in the burbs, and that was to me torture. It has its place, right? But as I grew up, I finally found my calling in urban regional planning, and so that was probably why I really didn't do well in the suburbs. But as kind of we look at the metropolitan region, we do see a lot of kind of segregation of people, and so when I grew up, I didn't see a lot of people that didn't look like me, and I think it didn't.
Every speaker who comes here is busy, right? Like, we're doing things that don't involve others.
Just being in that environment, you don't know different, but in my heart I knew that this wasn't for me. I didn't like this. And so I moved to Detroit when I was 19. and I lived, right at Brainerd and 3rd, so my room overlooked Jumbo's. I don't know if any of you know this, this place. So it was quite an interesting experience late at night to watch people coming out of a bar. But it's in the Cass corridor, and I looked around and kind of reflecting back now on where I was and where I started in the suburbs and where I was in Detroit. It wasn't perfect, of course, living in low-income housing in the Cass corridor, but it was where I felt at home. So I started at Wayne State when I was 19, and I was going for political science because what else do you do? And I started to fall in love with the city, right? And it was not just the people, but it was the city. Like, it's a beautiful city. So I was in Wayne State, it's the cultural area, the cultural arts area. It's beautiful architecture, just beautiful design. And so I started to pursue that passion of mine in urban and regional planning. So I did go and get a degree in that. And I've spent, since I was 19 up to now, better part of a decade just working in Detroit and coming back and doing what I can. I bartended my way through school, so I worked at Fishbones or Picnic Tempest, I was at all those places. So I saw a lot of Detroit, as a community volunteer, but I also saw a lot of it as, someone who's got to make money to live. And so, I think the story that I have is interesting, but, not necessarily better or worse than anybody else. And I started to take my urban planning background and think better about how I could help and how I could do more in the community. And that was when I started to mash up some of my experiences with community development and economic development, and that brought me to kind of this convergence of social enterprise. And I thought, wow, with the powerful mission that nonprofits have and the tools that we have in the business community, why can't we have capital behind the mission? And so I started to really become more active in researching and understanding social enterprise, and I think Detroit as a place is a really amazing example of social enterprise in the world. And I think, we do it, we don't identify that we do it, and I think that we've been doing it for a very long time. And so some of the experiences that I've been able to have, working with Startup Weekend, which is kind of a sister organization to this. We hosted the first ever Startup Weekend youth event at Ford Field last November. We welcomed about 65 kids to pitch their ideas on a Saturday morning and work to develop them in teams to launch a business by Sunday. And I think that while I've been doing a lot of work in the neighborhoods and being a part of a lot of different great activities that I was volunteering in and working in, that experience in and of itself just kind of brought it all together. Seeing kids that, because as organizers, Niles knows, organizing an event, you want to be inclusive and you want to build access and you want to make sure that the people who are in the audience see people that look like them up here, right? And so they can identify. And then especially when you're talking about kids, you want them to feel like they can have something that they can relate to. And so this experience with the youth event, and seeing kids from the suburbs, people come all the way from Minnesota. Kids come from Minnesota, kids came from the burbs, and then we were picking children up in the neighborhoods to bring them to the event. So, we would just swing by and pick a kid up on our way down to the event because we wanted to make sure they were there. We offered scholarships.
And it takes that.
Exactly, and because inclusivity is an intention, right? It's an intention that you have.
And I think it also has to speak to the power structure. The person who has the capacity to include. So Luther and I were talking before this panel, or earlier this morning, about the necessity of ownership within the discussion of inclusion. It can't be incumbent on the excluded to include themselves solely, right? There's certainly responsibility that has to fall on both sides of any line. But it very much has to be something. A door has to be unlocked so that it can be opened, right? Otherwise, we're robbing you, and that's not what we're trying to do here.
It goes both ways, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. But I think you're right. As organizers, let's say, as volunteers, right, we have a certain privilege in that we can give our time to do these things. And so I think when we step away and we think about who are we doing these things for, then we have to be intentional about making sure that they have access to things. And that is kind of the flavor of stuff that I do. But this youth event in particular, I kind of think when we talk about, and I'm taking a long time, I'm sorry, but when we talk about kind of Native Newcomer, and we're talking about our future, right? And we can't talk about future without youth. And you know, with this youth event, seeing kids working together and making best friends like over a day, you know, they're so like resilient, and we set the example for how they act. And you know, having kids come up to me and say, "Do you really think I can do this? You know, you really think we have a chance of winning this thing?" I'm like, absolutely. Like, go do it. Just go try. And even if you don't win, you have a chance. They see that, they do that. And so I think as we talk about these things here, it becomes so critical because that filters down into our youth. Hopefully they won't have to have these panels, right? And these conversations because we led by example.
Or they won't have to start it at the beginning.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, I digress.
Roz or Shay, either. You're kind of the
Hello.
Come on with it.
So I'm Roslyn. Hello, everyone. I moved to Detroit about 2.5 years ago. So I am a newcomer, but because the landscape is changing so quickly, I almost don't feel like I'm the newest comer. I think that there's sort of a new, you know.
Newer comers.
Totally. So I got here in fall of 2013, and the city was very different even then. But I'm originally from Seattle, Washington. I went to university in DC. I lived in New York for about 5 years, and then I lived in Singapore for a year. I lived in Boston for a bit, and then life found me in Detroit. So a bit of a nomad, but I love Detroit. You know, I got here and it really felt like home. I came here with my ex-husband. He's originally from Detroit, and so we moved here. You know, we divorced, but I loved the city. I loved being here, so I decided to stay. I came with a background in fashion, so I worked as a buyer in New York and a retail consultant in Singapore, and really wanted to bring sort of that element to the city, and was looking for a way to do that. And initially had an idea for, you know, a brand and this really high-end collection, but it was about me, right? And so I came here and I said, well, I don't know the city, I don't know what the city needs. Let me sort of immerse myself in a program that I think can give me a better gauge on what's going on here and what the social climate is. So I participated in a program called Build Institute, which is sort of an entrepreneurial incubator. They're now in Southwest Detroit. When I got here, they were at D-Hive, which was on Woodward, so it was sort of a welcome center of sorts. So I did this program fall 2013, and you know, I think programs like that are so important for newcomers and natives because it allows entrepreneurs from both ends of the spectrum to really cross-pollinate in this program, that they can bounce ideas off each other and see what is important to a native and what is important to a newcomer, and how can we collaborate and work together. So I went through this program and you know, came up with this idea and this expression that I was feeling. You know, all my friends and family were saying, why are you moving to Detroit, and you know, what's going on there, it's so scary. And I'm like, actually guys, it's fine. So I'm like, Detroit, you know, Detroit is totally the new black, and I would just like say it. And so I printed up some t-shirts, and I gave these t-shirts to friends saying Detroit is the new black. And they wore them, and people started to ask, you know, what is this? Where can I buy it? I want one. And then it was a phrase that I didn't think, you know, I knew it was clever, and it was a play on words, and it was sort of this attempt to really capture this moment in history and all of these different layers surrounding what's happening in Detroit. So I put the accent over the E, so it's Détroit. So you're really tapping into the French history of the city, and the city was founded, you know, upon trade. You know, initially the settlers were trading fur back to Europe, so really it was founded upon fashion, which I love. So there's that. And then, you know, you have the new black, which is sort of this like contemporary, like pop culture phrase, which is, you know, kind of dumb and kitschy, but it really represents, you know, contemporary and like what's modern and what's relevant and what is this new generation sort of responding to. And then you have, you know, the new black, which can be associated with New Detroit, which is so touchy, right? People are so sensitive about that. And you're saying the new black, which then, because you have Detroit above it, it takes all this racial undertone, and there's all this racial, you know, history in the city. And so it was something that really just, I think, I guess unknowingly to me, spoke to so many different demographics. And it was a unique opportunity for me to use my fashion and retail background to really affect this perception